They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from the person you trusted most. But I never expected it to come through a 3-line text message. My name's Noah Grayson, and for over 2 decades, I had worked quietly behind the scenes in cybersecurity, building defense systems for billion-dollar companies, anticipating digital threats before they surfaced. I could detect a breach in milliseconds, trace a hacker across 6 continents, and patch vulnerabilities before anyone even noticed. I built walls for a living, but I never thought I'd need one in my own marriage. I was 45 when it happened. It was a rainy Thursday evening in Seattle, the kind where the windows fog and the streets glow with blurry reflections of neon. I had just finished reviewing a financial anomaly for a client when my phone buzzed. One of those alerts that slices through your chest before you even look at the screen. A message from my wife, Madeline. I'm not coming back. You deserve the truth. 30 seconds later, the phone rang. Her voice was clinical, no hesitation. I've moved in with Grant, my boss. It's been going on for a while. I've also emptied the joint account. My lawyer said it was for the best. She hung up before I could even respond. I stared at the wall, my pen still in hand, frozen mid-note. The woman I had shared everything with, my home, my loyalty, my blueprint for the future, had decided I was no longer part of the plan. She didn't just walk away. She tried to financially erase me. What she didn't realize was that I saw this coming. Not the affair, not the exact words, but the breach, the shift, the lag in her honesty, the glitch in her patterns. You see, I don't do drama. I don't do yelling. I do systems. And 3 months before this moment, I'd already built one that would save me. Madeline thought she drained our life savings. What she actually did was trigger the first tripwire in a network I'd carefully designed, an invisible fortress cloaked in ordinary numbers. And what she just set in motion was a chain reaction she couldn't control. She thought she outplayed me. She didn't know I wrote the rules.
3 months before that stormy Thursday night, before Madeline's voice turned cold and her betrayal clicked into motion like clockwork, I already knew something was wrong. Not because of anything loud or obvious, but because the patterns began to shift, and patterns were my world. Madeline had always been meticulous, but lately she'd become secretive. Passwords changed without mention. Her work trips to San Diego kept extending into Sunday nights. She started locking her laptop screen even when she walked to the bathroom. The woman who once trusted me with her life now acted like I was a stranger in my own home. But I didn't confront her. Not immediately. In cybersecurity, you don't scream when someone breaks into the system. You observe, you track, you patch the weakness, and then, when the intruder thinks they've won, you pull the plug. So I built a system. First, I created a new joint account with $30,000, enough to look legitimate. Then, over the span of several weeks, I began migrating our true assets, real estate holdings, ETFs, retirement funds, into a blind trust under my name alone. A trust with biometric locks, facial recognition, authentication, and encrypted documentation. She signed the paperwork herself one night, while multitasking on a Zoom call, thinking it was routine refinancing. I watched her, across the kitchen island, smile into the camera, while digitally handing me the keys to her illusions. The main trigger came 2 weeks before her call. A series of emails between Madeline and her boss, Grant Whitmore, popped up in the back-end metadata of our shared smart hub. She'd linked her phone without disabling sync, and I had full logs from our home assistant. Metadata doesn't lie. Subject lines like weekend getaway schedule, bank move, and after he's out. That was enough. So I compiled everything. Not just emails, but ATM withdrawals from cities she claimed to be flying over, credit card receipts at steakhouses in LA while she was supposedly presenting at biotech expos, even a hotel confirmation under M. Grayson and G. Whitmore that she'd left open one morning while brushing her hair. I printed everything. Then I walked into a quiet office in Belltown, greeted my attorney Deborah Lynn with a firm nod, and slid the folder across her glass desk. She skimmed the top page. "You built a forensic case on your own marriage," she said. "No," I replied. "I just recorded the truth she tried to rewrite." Inside the folder were a time-stamped timeline of Madeline's asset redirections, 3 months of chat logs and location pings, proof of her login attempt to the Blind Trust, and most importantly, documentation showing that she had attempted to transfer $318,000, money she believed she had access to an offshore account under Grant's name. Deborah raised an eyebrow. "You set up dual authorization?" "And biometric verification," I nodded. "She can't move a penny without my approval." The morning after Madeline's text, "Why isn't the transfer completed?" I didn't answer. Instead, I watched her spiral in silence. 4 more texts followed, each more frantic than the last. But silence, I've learned, is louder than rage. That afternoon, Deborah submitted an official notice of intent to divorce, citing financial misconduct and breach of marital trust. In Washington state, fault isn't required, but with this documentation, it was a formality. What Madeline didn't know yet was that the real game hadn't even started. What she triggered wasn't a transaction, it was a chain reaction, one I'd been coding in my mind for months. While she sat in her boss's high-rise condo thinking she'd won, the digital sword of consequence hovered quietly above her. She underestimated me, not as a husband, but as a builder. Madeline played emotions. I built systems. She played short games. I engineered long ones. And now, the system was live.
Madeline always prided herself on being the smartest person in the room. She thought that hiding her tracks meant clearing her browser history and deleting texts. But she forgot who I was, who she married. I once built security frameworks for hedge funds that moved millions in a millisecond. I traced backdoor Trojans in Russian servers using nothing but email headers and packet trails. So when she started sneaking around, I didn't chase, I mirrored. 6 weeks before her midnight betrayal, I silently installed a device clone on her old tablet, the one we used for vacation movies. She never reset it. From there, I had everything: her texts, her hidden email account, even her voice memos to Grant. What I found wasn't just infidelity. It was something far worse. Madeline worked at Arcana Biogen, a biotech firm developing next-gen neuroinhibitors. Her role in strategic partnerships gave her access to confidential research pipelines, product timelines, and FDA communication schedules. And what did she do with that information? She forwarded it to Grant's personal Gmail. Then it showed up again in a shared drive owned by a firm called Millgate Holdings. I knew that name. Millgate was a boutique private equity fund that specialized in, surprise, biotech arbitrage. In other words, they bet big money on which companies would spike, usually right before those spikes happened. Madeline wasn't just betraying me, she was committing corporate espionage. I didn't panic. I documented. I time-stamped. I built a silent timeline and printed it all, because leverage beats outrage every single time. The day her lawyer finally called, the tone was predictably arrogant. Mrs. Grayson is requesting a 50-50 division of all marital assets, including the marital home, retirement accounts, and investment funds. I didn't argue. Instead, I asked his email and sent one PDF. It was a contract signed by Madeline last spring, authorizing me full discretionary control over our liquid assets. She signed it in a hurry during a refinance application, without reading the fine print. He went quiet. "There's more," I said, calmly. "But I thought I'd start with something simple." 10 minutes later, I received an email from Deborah, my attorney. Her lawyer just called. He wants to revisit settlement options urgently. I hadn't even dropped the real bomb yet. That came the next morning in a quiet meeting with a former client of mine, Stacy Kwan, now working as a compliance director for the SEC's San Francisco office. I walked into the cafe with a flash drive and a sealed envelope. No anger, no vendetta, just documentation. "This isn't a formal complaint," I told her. "Not yet." Stacy raised an eyebrow. "Then what is it?" "Leverage," I said. "But also a warning. Someone in your jurisdiction might be weaponizing medical trial data for personal gain." She flipped through the first few pages, her face tightening as she scanned email threads between Madeline and Grant, attachments with Arcana's draft announcements, and trading logs tied to Millgate Holdings. She nodded slowly. "I'll pretend this meeting didn't happen, but if anything leaks, the inquiry will begin within 72 hours. Understood." That night I slept for the first time in weeks. Madeline still had no idea what was coming. The next morning, her tone changed. I got a text from her, one I hadn't seen in years. Casual, almost flirty. "Hey, I was thinking maybe we could talk over coffee this week." Not a word about lawyers, not a word about money. I didn't respond. Instead, Deborah sent a new offer. $45,000 buyout, no claims to the trust, no contest on the house, and a non-disclosure clause about everything. Predictably, her lawyer balked. "This is blackmail," he snapped over the phone. "No," Deborah replied. "This is an offer of peace before the fire gets bigger." That evening, I left a printed sample of the SEC compliance logs on Madeline's desk, one she hadn't used in days. I knew she'd find it. By midnight, I saw her email sync through the tablet. Search history, SEC whistleblower penalties, Millgate investigation, federal prison insider trading sentence. The ghost in her machine whispered louder than any confrontation. Let her panic. Let her wonder what I'd really do. Because when someone builds a house of lies, sometimes the most powerful move isn't to tear it down, but to let them watch the wind shift. By the time Madeline realized the full extent of what I knew, her control was unraveling. The PDF, the silence, the pending SEC exposure, each was a move in a larger game. But what she didn't realize yet was that the game board had already shifted. She was playing checkers. I was playing multi-board chess. 2 days after her attempted charm text, her lawyer reached out with a new offer. Madeline would forego alimony, but still wanted half of the house and our long-term equity holdings.
In return, she wanted to keep things clean and private. I declined. I offered $50,000, one time. No claim to anything else, no alimony, no access to shared files or assets. And I added a clause. She was never to mention our marriage publicly or professionally. Her lawyer sent back one word: unacceptable. That same day, I received a message from an unfamiliar number. I know what she did. I have proof. Meet me. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Faye's Cafe. I don't chase shadows, but this one intrigued me. The next afternoon, I arrived early. A woman in her late 30s entered quietly, dressed in a gray blazer and worn heels. She looked around before walking straight to my table. She asked, "Is this Elliot Cross?" I said yes. She slid a small flash drive across the table and whispered, "You didn't get this from me." She introduced herself only as Rachel, worked in IT support at Arcana. They told me not to ask questions, but I did. She had stumbled upon files flagged by their internal monitoring system, unauthorized access to proprietary drug trial results, specifically files copied to an external drive after hours. The login credentials? Madeline's. She paused. But that's not all. I leaned in. Her boyfriend, Grant, is tied to Millgate Holdings. The firm has been making bets on Arcana's product lines, winning every time. And the connection? I asked. She opened her phone and showed me photos, screenshots of Zoom calls. Madeline on video, with Grant, her screen shared, a chart from Arcana's internal database glowing on the screen. I took the drive and slid her a prepaid Visa card loaded with $2,000. "Thank you," I said. "If you're questioned, say nothing." She said, "Already planned on it." That night, I looped Deborah in again. We now had direct visual proof, not just of an affair, but of a clear insider data leak, with potential jail time attached. But I didn't want Madeline in jail. I wanted her to understand what real power felt like. So I made one final offer, through Deborah, of course. This time the terms were brutal in their elegance. $45,000 in one-time settlement. No claim to property, trust, or equity. A gag order for both her and Grant, and a mutual NDA covering our entire relationship. And full digital relinquishment of shared devices. The attached files included 3 pages, images from the Zoom call, the flagged internal beta transfer logs, and an email chain between her and Grant outlining their exit strategy. We waited. Silence stretched into 48 hours. Then came the 4 a.m. text from Madeline. "You've made your point. I accept." I never meant it to go this far. I was just tired of being invisible. I stared at that last line for a long time. It would have cut deep if I hadn't already cauterized the wound. The next day, she signed everything. No lawyers, no courtroom drama. Just a single PDF returned, e-signed and time-stamped at 6:13 a.m. The irony, she still thought she was escaping punishment. She didn't realize I'd already sent a redacted version of the evidence to Arcana's compliance officer. I didn't include her name, just Grant's login records, Millgate's trades, and the suspicious timing. 3 days later, Grant's name vanished from Millgate's board page. The financial press whispered compliance concerns. He didn't show up to their quarterly event. And as for Madeline, she was still free, still working, still pretending none of it had happened. But the silence around her had changed. People at Arcana stopped copying her on strategic emails. The CEO made vague references about tightening information controls. And at a recent industry gala, someone told me she'd arrived alone. No Grant, no smile. Power, I realized, isn't just about taking something away. It's about what you allow to happen.
and sometimes what you choose not to destroy.
3 months after Madeline signed away her claims and disappeared into silence, I received an email that would shift everything again. This time, it wasn't from lawyers, or her, or any agency. It was from Ava Kim, one of Arcana's board members. We'd spoken briefly once, years ago, at a compliance retreat. Back then, I'd warned her quietly about weak internal protocols and outdated security layers. Her subject line now read, "We believe in redemption, especially when it begins with truth." In her message, she didn't mention the evidence I'd sent, but I didn't need her to. She wrote, "Mr. Cross, we're forming a new internal unit focused on ethics and digital risk. We need people who not only understand systems, but have lived through betrayal. Your name came up more than once. If you're open to it, I'd like to talk." I sat back in my chair rereading the line, "have lived through betrayal." It hit something quiet inside me, because after everything, after the betrayal, the dismantling, the negotiations, and the restraint, I was still standing. But more than that, I had clarity. I took the job. I didn't need the salary, I didn't need the prestige, but I needed the mission. I began consulting for Arcana under a 6-month contract, building frameworks for identifying internal sabotage, misuse of proprietary data, and even patterns in employee digital behavior that often preceded ethical violations. This time I wasn't guarding a portfolio. I was guarding trust. And to my surprise, I found I was good at it. Not because I had certifications or the right buzzwords, but because I understood betrayal at the granular level. I knew what a cheater's browser history looked like. I knew what passwords they changed first. I knew how they masked insider leaks as data transfers, and how they justified the worst things with the softest language. Soon enough, Ava asked me to go full-time. I accepted and was placed in charge of a task force with 6 analysts and 2 former forensic auditors. I even brought on Rachel, the quiet IT worker who had handed me the flash drive at Faye's Cafe. She was promoted within a month. A year after that sleepless night when Madeline called from Miami, I stood in Arcana's new ethics in digital risk war room. A wall of screens behind me showed real-time flagging of suspicious internal activity. Every blinking line was a choice someone in the company was making. Some innocent, some not. We didn't catch everyone, but we caught enough. We created a space where fear didn't rule, but vigilance did. A culture where people knew the system wasn't blind. Meanwhile, word filtered back to me through colleagues and whispers. Madeline had left Arcana quietly. No announcement, no tribute. She'd tried to interview with another biotech firm, but was blocked from clearance. Apparently, she'd chosen to pursue other interests. Eventually, she took a position as a digital marketing instructor at a community college 3 states away. No more pharmaceutical deals, no high-stakes launches, no more Grant. He had vanished from public records months earlier. His name now only appeared in a line of SEC watchlist reports. But I didn't care about him. And truthfully, I no longer cared about her. What mattered was what I had built. What we had built. My team was tight, trustworthy. No politics, no secret agendas, just people who wanted to do good work and stop damage before it started. One morning, as I was reviewing an audit trail from a flagged login, Ava stepped into my office. "Do you ever think," she asked,
That some of the best people for this job are the ones who've been burned the worst? I looked at her and nodded. Because we don't look away anymore. She smiled. Exactly. That night, as I left the Arcana building, I paused in the lobby and looked up at the company's mission plaque. It read, "Healing through science, integrity through action." It used to feel like branding. Now it felt personal. I stepped outside into the evening air, the city skyline shimmering beyond the trees. I had no need for revenge anymore, no bitterness, just peace, and a sharp understanding of what true justice looks like. It doesn't always arrive with sirens or headlines. Sometimes it looks like a locked server no one can quietly copy files from. Sometimes it looks like a man who once nearly lost everything, now leading a team that prevents others from facing the same thing. Sometimes it looks like redemption.
In the end, it wasn't the $870,000 trust or the carefully orchestrated settlement that brought me closure. It was the understanding that I had chosen honor when I could have chosen destruction. Every part of this story, starting from Madeline's cold phone call in the kitchen, to the quiet spreadsheet tracking her lies, to the final negotiation where she signed away her access, led me to one truth. Revenge is tempting, but restraint is powerful. I had every chance to destroy her. The documents Rachel gave me could have buried both her and Grant. But I chose a different path, not because I was weak, but because I was done carrying her weight. Her betrayal wasn't my story to hold on to forever. Instead, I chose to build something better. From body 1, where her phone call shattered our marriage in seconds, to body 2, where I silently prepared for what I suspected, to body 3, where the betrayal turned from personal to criminal, and finally body 4, where I helped launch a new ethics division that would safeguard truth in the corporate world. I rebuilt myself. The job I accepted at Arcana wasn't just work, it was a mirror. Each time we uncovered a red flag, I saw a version of myself who once ignored signs. Each time we helped someone avoid a trap, I felt like I was undoing one thread of what Madeline had done to me. And no, I never reached out to her again. I never answered the final text from Vanessa. Some things are better left in the past, especially when the future is finally clean. Today, the trust fund that Madeline tried to empty is supporting scholarships in business ethics. I walk into my office knowing I'm protecting people and ideas. And sometimes, late at night, when I look at the Denver skyline from my deck, I think about the simple truth that saved me. When someone betrays you, it doesn't define your worth, it exposes theirs. To anyone going through betrayal, financial sabotage, or a relationship built on lies, don't waste energy trying to get even. Get clear, get smart, and reclaim your story. Because the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's freedom. It's peace. It's waking up and not thinking about them anymore. If you've ever been betrayed and came out stronger, share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We post powerful real-life stories every week that remind you, dignity always wins in the end.